6 black girls, as young as 10 and as old as 18 years of age, were killed at the hands of the Freeway Phantom murderer, who would kidnap his victims in the Washington, D.C. streets, only to strangle and dispose of them near busy roads like highways. I believe it's important to note that these serial murders were the first of its kind ever in Washington, which may have played a role in whether or not police were thorough enough or experienced enough when it came to investigating a case of this magnitude. So I'm going to take a deep dive into the specifics of the case, most notably the individual victims. In the afternoon of May 1st, 1971, police were called in to the Freeway Phantom's first victim, which at the time, they were unaware it was going to be the first of many to come. The first body was actually discovered by kids. So imagine you're a kid, you're playing with your friends, and you come across a dead body at an age where you don't normally even think or experience death, which can be pretty traumatic. The kids were in a grassy area near Interstate 295 behind a hospital. When the kids found the body, they called out towards a police officer. The first victim was named Carol Spinks, who was an introverted 7th grader who attended Johnson Junior High School. She was actually born as an identical twin to a single mother of 8 children. She loved jumping double Dutch rope, playing jacks with her siblings, and was proud to show off her hula hooping talents. Although Spinks' body was found on May 1st, she was actually kidnapped 6 days prior after traveling on foot just 4 blocks from where she lived with her family in an apartment at Waller Place, SE. That night, she left home in order to go to a local 7-Eleven. You see, her sister Valerie, who was 24 at the time, gave Spinks $5 and basically convinced her to purchase TV dinner meals, bread, and soda. You're probably asking yourself, why didn't Valerie go to the 7-Eleven herself, considering the fact that she was an adult, and Spinks was only in the 7th grade, which would make her 12 years old. Whatever the reason was, she was unable to get groceries herself. That night though, their mom Alantine didn't approve of them leaving the home while she met up with an aunt in Brentwood, Maryland. Even though they knew the consequences, Spinks still decided to head out. When Spinks was making her way, she came across her mom, who inquired as to why she was outside of the home. After telling her mom that she wanted to go and get groceries, her mom allowed her, but she promised Spinks that she would be whipped when she reached home. However, Spinks never arrived home. Her mom, who understandably was worried sick, decided to get authorities involved and filed a missing persons report that same night, after she and other concerned individuals looked everywhere in the neighborhood trying to look for her. When police retrieved her body, they noticed that she had been strangled and sodomized, and she had been inflicted with cuts on her face, neck, chest, and each hand. There was blood in her nose as well. There happened to be green synthetic fibers on her clothing, and her shoes were nowhere to be seen. Spinks' body was discovered on a Saturday, where she was donning the exact blue gym shorts, red sweater, and brown socks as when she had exited the apartment, almost a week before. According to the medical examiner, there was citrus fruit in her stomach, which meant that the killer most likely nourished Spinks and kept her breathing for a couple of days, because according to the police, she was dead for 2 to 3 days when they discovered her. The associate working at 7-Eleven told law enforcement that he saw Spinks exit the establishment with the groceries. A teenager walking towards the same store with her mom and sister remembered walking past Spinks, who was carrying a grocery bag. More than 2 months later, a second victim was discovered by a DC Department of Highways and Traffic employee along I-295. He was having issues with his car and decided to pull over away from the road. He saw the body as soon as he got out and contacted authorities. Strangely, he wasn't the first person to call that morning about the same discovery. Dispatchers sent officers who apparently went to the scene and reported back saying that they couldn't find anything and decided to move on. However, the police actually didn't do a thorough investigation because apparently they drove around the area but didn't actually get out of their car and look for remains, which is ridiculous because if there is even any mention of a dead body, you would want to find and locate it as soon as possible. So the police didn't find the body, and a week goes by with the body still left alone in the field, waiting to be found, when on July 19th, the person who actually called about the body returned to the scene because they may have called and left without verifying that the police came and did their job. So they felt like returning to make sure it was gone and dealt with by authorities. And to their disbelief, the body was still there, rotten in the unbearable summer heat. Upset by the laziness of law enforcement, the police were notified again, who eventually discovered and retrieved the body. The body was only 15 feet from where Spinks' body was discovered. The victim was Darlenia Johnson, a 16-year-old girl who was reported missing on July 9th, one day after letting her mother, Helen, know that she was going to start her shift at the Oxen Run Recreation Center. Apparently, the center was holding a sleepover that night as well, and she told her mom that she would attend, but she never arrived. Johnson was discovered 11 days later, and her face and body was so terribly decomposed that the medical examiner had to unfortunately remove her fingers to find out who she was. In the 70s, DNA testing was non-existent, so police used fingerprints. Due to her decomposition, they were unable to determine her cause of death. It has been thought that if the body was found earlier, they could have found out how she died. 9 days after finding Johnson, a hitchhiker found a body on Route 50 in Cheverly, Maryland. The third victim was Brenda Faye Crockett, who was a dimpled 10-year-old girl from Washington who had lots of friends and loved smiling for the camera and going to church. Crockett was lying along the road wearing a blue and white print shorts and a matching halter top. She was strangled and raped. Just like Spinks, she also had green synthetic fibers on her clothes. Crockett, who was barefooted and had pink foam hair curlers, had been abducted while making her way to the Safeway, which was located near 14th and U Streets in Northwest, to purchase bread and dog food for the family's 3 dogs. Her mother sent her out around 8 at night as the kids from the neighborhood were getting ready for movie night on the street. Crockett's mother assumed that she had taken a friend with her to the store, which is farther from the truth. After a whole hour went with no sign of her daughter, her mom decided to search the neighborhood for her, while Crockett's younger sister stayed behind with her mom's male partner. 20 minutes after 9 p.m., the phone rang, and it turned out to be Crockett. She basically told her sister that she was abducted by a Caucasian male. However, police at the time felt like the story was fake and was made up to throw them off the trail. Crockett also mentioned that he took her somewhere in Virginia, but was gonna let her go home in a cab. I guess she hanged up because Crockett called a second time 25 minutes later and spoke to her mom's boyfriend, who asked Crockett if she had any idea where she was located in Virginia. She told him no, but then asked him if her mom saw her. Puzzled, the boyfriend then asked her how could her mom see her if she's in Virginia. The boyfriend then said that he wanted to get on the phone to speak with her abductor, but Crockett whispered, "Well, I'll see you," before the line went dead. It's believed that the reason for the second call was that the killer believed that he was spotted by Crockett's mom while she was looking for her daughter, so he used her daughter to find out if her mom knew the abductor or what he looked like. This may be a cause of concern for the killer because it was discussed that the killer may actually have known Crockett's mother. Less than 8 hours later, Crockett's body was discovered. Surprisingly, her bare feet were clean as if someone had washed them. The fourth victim, Nino Moshia Yates, was 12 years old and attended the Kelly Miller Junior High School as a 6th grader. She vanished on October 1st, 1971. Yates went to go to a Safeway a block away from the apartment where she lived with her family in the 4900 block of Benton Road, Southeast, at around 7 p.m. to purchase sugar, flour, and paper plates. Her stepmom just gave birth, and her father had to stay by his wife and the baby at the hospital. On her way home, she disappeared, and she was discovered by a teenage boy who found her body at around 9 p.m. near Pennsylvania Avenue, east of the district. She had been strangled and raped. When police went to retrieve Yates' body, they also found green synthetic fibers on her clothes, just like Spinks and Crockett. After finding Yates, the news and media in general blew up because they realized that there was a serial killer on the loose, and it was where they decided to call him the Freeway Phantom. 6 weeks later, the fifth victim was discovered. Brenda Woodward was an 18-year-old who disappeared on November 15th after stopping at Ben's Chili Bowl with a classmate from Cardoza High School in Northwest, where she went for night courses to develop her typing and shorthand skills. Normally, her classmate would drive her home, but his vehicle was being repaired, so they both took public transportation. Woodward got off at 8th and H Streets Northeast and hopped on another bus, while her classmate stayed on the bus and continued on. The next morning, Woodward's body was located on Hospital Drive south of Route 202 near Prince George's Hospital. A cop on patrol found her body before 5 a.m. When they found her, Woodward's burgundy crush velvet coat was draped over her. Her black turtleneck was inside out, and the buttons from her jacket and skirt were gone as well. And it appeared that she had been raped, strangled, and stabbed 4 times. The defensive wounds on her hands show that she fought her killer. A very strange note, written in pencil, was found stuffed in Woodward's pocket, which read, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me, if you can." And it was signed, Freeway Phantom. Police for sure knew that Woodward wrote the note as prescribed by the killer, since the handwriting matched other pieces of paper that were written by her. Also, since her handwriting didn't look as if she was anxious or nervous while writing it. In other words, since it looked normal, police assumed that she knew her killer. It's also been assumed that someone in Woodward's neighborhood saw or heard at least something, since the people who live in the area usually sat outside or conversed on street corners. Almost a year, specifically 10 months, has gone by, and people assume that the Freeway Phantom left or was incarcerated for other offenses. However, on September 6, 1972, the body of Diane Williams, the 6th and last victim, who was just 17 years old, was discovered by a truck driver who decided to pull off the road. The junior, who attended Ballot Senior High School, has spent her evening with her boyfriend, who walked her to the bus stop for a ride home to Halley Terrace in Southeast. She was strangled and left along I-295, 200 yards south of the DC line. The name Diane was written on one of her white shoes, and $1.26 was in the hip pocket of her jeans, which rules out the fact that her murder was related to robbery. The FBI decided to create a task force to investigate Freeway Phantom's killings. There was even a point in time where 100 detectives and federal agents were involved in the task force. The FBI basically left no stones unturned, and they have created a list of hundreds of suspects that they had in mind. Some of the suspects include a psychiatrist who worked at St. Elizabeth Hospital. They even questioned a man who owned a club for teens, and it was a club where Darlenia Johnson used to hang out at, but they were all cleared from being a suspect. There was a group called the Green Vega Rapists, who were thought to be perpetrators in the Freeway Phantom killings. One of the gang members told investigators that his friend was the one who killed those girls, but strangely, he stopped cooperating with investigators after his confession was made known, and he was afraid that he would be punished by the gang. Authorities have discredited the Green Vega Rapists as the perpetrators, and have instead focused on a more probable suspect named Robert Askins. The reason why Askins was a more probable suspect was because Askins was a convicted abductor and sexual predator who had already been charged with murder for the 3rd time. As well, He was previously committed into St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Also, when investigators searched his house, they found a drawer which contained decisions from a judge in a case that involved Askins, and in the documents, the term tantamount was used, just like the Freeway Phantom note that was found on Brenda Woodward's body. It was also supposed that Askins used that term when conversing with others. Although the circumstantial evidence they found was incriminating, what was missing and deemed more vital to actually charge him for those killings was the physical proof to link Askins to the offenses. And since there was no physical proof, Askins was able to deny any and all connections to the Phantom Highway murders. He eventually passed away in prison in April of 2010. There are a number of reasons why the Freeway Phantom has been so hard to apprehend. He was most likely charismatic and may have been less probable to be suspected of committing such a heinous crime. It is thought that killers that are organized are more probable to be more intellectual, physically attractive, in a relationship, employed, educated, skilled, orderly, cunning, and able to control themselves when they need to. They may have some range of skill for handling people and society, and may also be charismatic enough to chat and turn on their victims in order to capture them. When it comes to forensics, he is smart enough to wash his victims' bodies in order to get rid of any evidence and his DNA. Not to mention, he left the bodies in different states throughout the country, which authorities thought was designed to keep different police jurisdictions from piecing the offenses together. One of the biggest reasons why the Freeway Phantom has not been apprehended, in my opinion, is because of the race of the victims. One of the most notable features of the Freeway Phantom is that he targeted young black girls. It is actually thought that if the girls were white instead of black, there would have been more coverage and manpower in order to apprehend the killer. Evander Spinks, the sibling of Carol Spinks, told the Washington Post back in 2006, "You better bet that if these had been white girls, the police would have solved the cases. They didn't care about us. All the cases involving white girls still get publicity, but ours have been forgotten." Diane Williams' sister, Patricia, told People magazine how she always hoped she might finally see the killings being solved. She said, "I will not be surprised that I will die not knowing who killed my sister, but I'm never going to stop praying that I do." Her mom, Margaret, added, "I know she's rested in peace and it doesn't matter to her anymore, but I would like to know who did it and why. That's the big question. Why?" To this day, the Freeway Phantom murders remains an open cold case, and if you or anyone has any info, please contact authorities in Washington, D.C. or the FBI. That is all for the Freeway Phantom murders cold case. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you found it informative to watch. If you guys have any suggestions on what other cases I can cover, please let me know in the comments down below. As well, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this case. Do you think that the killer really was Askins? Or do you think it was someone else? Do you also agree that if authorities were more proactive, they could have apprehended someone earlier and that they failed those young black girls? Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video if you want. And I will see you next time on Melanin Mysteries.